we are going to the current reigning President's Trophy defending holders, the Winnipeg Jets. They're taking on the red hot St. Louis Blues. They've tailed off a little bit recently, but man, that could be a great matchup. Guys, let me hear some thoughts that you guys have for this upcoming series.
Yeah, honestly, I know Mando said off the top, like we're excited for just the playoffs in general, and I really do feel that way. And we'll get to a series later on where I kind of said, I think everyone's got this at the bottom, but no, this is another one where I think on balance people would probably rate it lower, but it deserves a lot of credit. I think, like you said, the heat that the St. Louis Blues are coming into this series with really rises the stakes of the series. But let's not beat around the bush. Winnipeg are the favorites. They absolutely should be the favorites in every sense of the word. All the stats lean in their favor, and they have quite literally the best goalie in the league. He's a Hart Trophy candidate. So that's the simple way of looking at it. Mando, you got anything?
No, I think that's well put. I think if the Winnipeg Jets end up coming out of this series and they do it cleanly, I think people will look at them a little bit more with a serious look towards the finals. I'm just a little bit skeptical on this series in the sense that I don't know if Winnipeg's really shown much in the past few years. They've had a solid team, but in a sense, they're kind of like, I wouldn't compare them to the Leafs, but they're one of those teams where this seems to be one of the best iterations of their team, especially with Hellebuck playing his best hockey, and they have a deeper team. Their defense is strong, and I'm not giving enough credit to St. Louis, but coming in red hot is basically one of the best things you can do heading into the playoffs, regardless of your standings. We saw the LA Kings do it years ago. So I think it'll be a little bit more fun than people give it credit for. But yeah, Christian, it is on the lower end of the excitement level. Until the puck drop, we could see things change pretty quickly. Dave, what do you got for us, buddy?
I think it's going to be testy right from the start. Scott Arniel's side, they're hungry. They've been embarrassed the last two playoff series. We're going to get to another team that kind of falls into the same like mode of, finishing higher in the standings and then kind of falling flat on their face in the playoffs. I think you know them very well, guys. But for the Winnipeg Jets, this series has to be about, asserting your dominance if they want to go through. The only thing for me personally is I don't really believe in them. I really don't. I think just in terms of just at forward alone, I think they do get a lot of depth scoring, but I'm not convinced. Like Vlad Namestnikov as going into the series as a 2C for me. I know he had a great year. I don't dispute that he's a great player, but I'm not too sure if I'm too comfortable with him in this high leverage matchup. If I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know personally. I don't see it with this current Winnipeg Jets team, regardless of the fact that they won the President's Trophy. And I know everything is going to be going against me, saying like they should be the ones coming out on top, but I don't believe in them. I think they are a facade.
Wow. Facade off the first team we talked about. Facade.
Yeah,
Get them off my screen.
I truly think they're a facade. I don't know
Okay.
For whatever reason, they have the talent. Kyle Connor, just finished with a career year, and multiple players on the team actually finished with career years, like Mark Scheifele as well. There's a couple others now that aren't coming to mind, but
Gabe Vilardi, right?
Gabe Vilardi,
who's not
yes.
going to be potentially in this series, right? Like this
True.
is part of it too. Is I think you feel a lot better about Vlad Namestnikov 2C, or as good as you can feel, if you had Gabe Vilardi in the top six and Nick Ehlers. It's another guy who's injured here as well.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
Now,
And
Nick Ehlers' playoff record is not good. His
Not
numbers
great.
are not very good
Having
at all.
him in the lineup, though, is probably a lot better than
You
not
always
having
take
him in the lineup.
Definitely. So I think that is part of it too. So yeah, I don't know. You want to get into the meat of it? I think for every series, we should maybe lay out like kind of what we have prepared. Each of us are going to come with you.
Yeah, go right ahead. Sorry, I was gonna say we've got some matchups that we want to focus on. We've got a couple of playoff X factors. Then after that, we're gonna kind of put the blame on who would get the most blame should this team lose. So if Winnipeg loses, St. Louis loses, and so on and so forth. And we'll kind of run run it that way going forward. But jump just right off the bat, what is a marquee matchup that we should be paying attention to for this series?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and compare two aspects of each team and kind of, I want to pick the two most important pieces or the most important piece on each side and tell you if this team wins out, then in this specific battle, they should win the series as a whole. So for Winnipeg and St. Louis, I'm just keeping it really simple. To me, it's the two best players on each side going head to head. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, already mentioned by you, Dave, they are the leaders of this team. 97 points and a career year for Mark Scheifele. Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou have stepped into that role for St. Louis. It sucks that they've lost Dylan Holloway on the St. Louis side, but like I said, no Gabe Vilardi, no Nick Ehlers for Winnipeg. It should even itself out in terms of the depth, but it starts at the top of the lineup for me. And if you want to talk about carrying water for the Winnipeg Jets, it starts and ends with Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. I think because of how I'm laying this out here, I am leaning towards the Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele side of things. Mm-hmm. But I think for St. Louis, if you're coming up with the recipe to win this series, it's Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou showing that they're on the same level as those two in Winnipeg.
100%. Yeah, no, I mean, it's fair to side with Kyle Connor for sure and Mark Scheifele. Like, they have immense firepower. Kyle Connor, I'll be honest, I wanted to like look back at playoff runs. The guy is like last year they lost in 5, scored 3 goals. Like, the guy tends to show up when the lights turn the brightest, right? For me though, I do have a couple, unless we want to jump ahead, like I've got an X factor for you in this series for Winnipeg, and it's the obvious one. It's Connor Hellebuyck. Connor Hellebuyck has been brutal with the lights at the brightest. Just recently lost the Four Nations face-off against the guy that he's going to be staring down on the other end in Jordan Binnington. Now, I'm not going to sit here and put the blame on Connor Hellebuyck for losing that series, but in playoff past, his stats were brutal. Back-to-back sub 890 save percentages, including .864 last year, like an 86% save percentage for a guy that is going to win the Vezina this year. Had a 930 this year, 925 plus. Like, the guy was
925 on the dot.
925 on the dot, 46 wins. But he still played 63 games this year. They've been trying to get away from taxing Connor Hellebuyck over the past few years, but every year it just kind of seems to be him running back out for 60-plus games. And this year's been no different. So Scott Arniel, Paul Maurice, whoever they had before, like, everybody's kind of going down the same formula. And I get it. You don't want to, like, pull this guy. You don't want to tell him, like, no, he can't play. But at some point, you got to put your foot down. Mm-hmm. Like, I know Eric Comrie's not, like, the greatest backup goalie, but you can't give the guy an extra 5 games maybe? Like, I don't know. Is that so difficult?
I'll be honest. I kind of think limiting him to 63 this year is a win. I think 63 for Connor Hellebuyck is... Because I almost think that he demands the net in a sense too. I almost don't know how much rest he wants. I think 20 games out of your backup, honestly, for their setup is enough. But you're right. Like, this is what happens when you have back-to-back playoff, quote-unquote, choke jobs, plus a Four Nations finals loss as the best goalie in the league. You have these questions turned at you. Whether they are totally real or not, this is what happens. You are going to be doubted in every sense of the word, and I think it's fair to make that argument.
I think I'll jump into, because just for continuity perspective, I'll get to my blame game for Winnipeg, and it's also Connor Hellebuyck. I think he can be the X factor and the blame game. He's been blamed before in the past, over the past couple of years, and Dave, you gave a lot of really great numbers there. And I think just to add on top of that, he's played 63 games this year. I think he played about 64 and 60, one of those two in the past 2 years. So in terms of like his consistency during the regular season, including 9 out of the past 10 games this year. So it's not even like down the stretch they kind of mixed in Comrie there. They kept him and they rode their horse. And maybe that's great for him, like you said, Christian. I tend to side more on your side, Dave, where maybe down the stretch you kind of give him a couple extra days off, especially starting as basically one of the first games, like playing pretty early on in the playoff schedule. And then you just look at goalies in general. They often are the pinnacle of a team. We've seen it in the past couple years. I think I did some research, and the goalie with like the worst save percentage as the main goalie, I know there's been a lot of 1-2s in the past couple years, but the worst goalie over the last 10 years to finish with a save percentage was Darcy Kemper, and he was about 902. But that being said, he was playing with an Avs team that went 16-4 to go and win their Stanley Cup in 2002.
Yeah.
You know, so and he had, I think, a Noonan came in and saved his bacon a couple times. Like, he had a couple backup moments, but that being said, he had a team in front of him that was able to stop and defend the puck. I know Winnipeg has a great team as well, and some of their defense is understated, but I think it's obvious that if he does not have a good series, counter Hellebuck does, I don't know how they hold on. I still think they have the firepower, but he's going to be the guy that gets the blame if they can't get it done.
Even last year, though, I vaguely remember them. Like, they went up against a fast Colorado team, and I don't think St. Louis has that type of firepower in terms of, like, intensity and, like, actual firepower. But, like, their defense was trying to do a job. Like, they were doing as best as they could given the circumstance, like, given the talent that was in front of them. And Connor really, really just let them down. So for me, he's my biggest X factor on the Winnipeg side.
Do you have the X factor for the St. Louis side, Dave?
I do, actually. Yeah, I do. So I did cheat a little bit with this one. This is the only one I think I cheated with. Instead of going with one player, I'm going with a collective. And it's the St. Louis PK. Now, just based on face value numbers, you'll see the St. Louis PK ranks 28th in the league. But I'm not trying to denigrate them because over the past 20 games, they've actually been in the top 3 in terms of penalty kill. They've only given up, I believe it's single digits amount of goals shorthanded. Now, they're going up against a Winnipeg team who finished first in the power play, yeah. But they've kind of tailed off a little bit recently in terms of, like, they got off to a real hot start, especially winning 15 of their first 17, I believe, or 15 of their first 16 games. And that is where a bulk of that the power
they built up a nice early
they built it
there.
up. Yeah, and not many teams were able to really even come close. So for St. Louis, especially the first, like, 3 to 4 games of the series, when the whistle's going to be a little bit looser, we might see a few extra power plays. And St. Louis isn't a team to really give up that many power play opportunities. But recently, when they've been very good at stomping it out, right? So for this PK, you don't want to get down early against this team that seemingly has no confidence in the playoffs. And what better way to gain confidence than on your power play, right? So for St. Louis, for me, it's their PK.
One thing I'll just add there is, so I've got stats basically for every team, at least on the special teams. I've broken it up until, like their overall on the season. And then I've also got since the Four Nations face-off. So that's February 22nd. So to your point, Dave, St. Louis's penalty kills since Four Nations face-off, 7th in the league, 81.5%. Winnipeg, their power play, same time, 24th in the league. They've tailed off as well. So the momentum is definitely siding there with that penalty kill. Yeah.
100%.
I'll just jump in on the blame game in terms of St. Louis, although I do think there's not a lot of pressure on them, and they're kind of the darlings of the NHL right now, but I honestly think it's just running out of gas. Like, everyone will look at this team and think what they went 19-4-3 down the stretch after the Four Nations face-off. That's a league best. And obviously they got into the playoff spot. They were an exciting, like, team to kind of watch. I don't know how confident I am in their depth. It seems like they've just been running on sheer will, Jobu in the locker room, and just a great kind of like presence in that locker room. I do think that based on a couple interviews I've seen, they have a team that seems to be connected together, which can definitely take you a long way. I know they did this in 2019, and obviously it landed in a Stanley Cup, so we can't count them out at the end of the day. There's a lot of still good core pieces from that run, but it obviously pays to be a hot club. I just don't know if Thomas and Kyrou can continue riding this team and kind of drawing them into the promised land. You have those key pieces like Buchnevich and Jake Neighbors, but you have, like we talked about, Dylan Holloway might not be there. And you got some young pieces that down the road in the future might add a lot, like a Holloway when he's healthy, and Bolduc, who's kind of shown flashes of brilliance. I just don't know if they have the gas to power through like a Connor Hellebuck, as he's likely the X factor rather than the guy to blame. And I think we all have Winnipeg kind of advancing, but I just think it's like, okay, you showed us you can get into the playoffs, but I don't know if that's all they have moving forward due to the Blues.
So I think on that note, we can kind of give our predictions. And producer Mando, it's unfortunate to say, I do have St. Louis actually advancing.
Oh no!
So
That's a wild. Yeah. I like. You know what? I don't hate it because we've seen it happen before. But it's interesting.
My reasoning behind it is, I looked at some of the other matchups as well, and for the most part, I can't really see too many, let's say, upsets happening.
Yeah.
I think this is the only one where we can really where there's a clear chasm between the two teams, and there's a real chance for the favorites to kind of trip and fall on their own face. I don't know. I do feel bad, like, kind of going against the Jets. Like, they're always like a fun team to watch. They are like loaded with firepower, but man, I can't deny how good St. Louis has been over the past that'd be close to 2 months now. Like, they've been playing some, like, at one point they were near the doldrums, like near the bottom of the league standings. Dude, their stretch has quite literally put them in territories that we haven't seen since 2019 for them. Yeah. And does that ring a bell for St. Louis?
Never
fans,
heard of it.
Right? Yeah. So listen, I'm not gonna. I won't sit here and say like St. Louis is gonna go for a cup. They could. Anybody could. But I don't know. It just seems to be two teams kind of crossing paths at different times for their seasons.
That's fair. I'll just jump in. I'll give you the last word here, Christian. I have Winnipeg in 6. I think they make pretty steady work of St. Louis, but St. Louis just kind of claws their way to a couple of wins here, and I just think they run out of gas, like I said. I'll give Winnipeg their credit, and I think this might be the year they push for a conference final and beyond, so that's my prediction there.
I'm going Winnipeg in 6 as well. I do want to give St. Louis their credit. They're a team that are a lot higher on just my likability list than a lot of other teams, but I think Winnipeg now with a chip on their shoulder as well, just even from a media aspect, like they have gotten a lot of quote unquote disrespect, if you want to call it that. And some teams, they're able to channel that and go on a run. Maybe it's not a run, but I think round 1, they will take it on the shoulder and they will be able to get past the St. Louis Blues.